Hello there and welcome to my Arty Corner here on YouTube. Firstly, if you watched my previous video from yesterday, I want to apologise. I didn't realise that my microphone was picking up the noise from the fan I had on. It was really warm here yesterday, even in the early part of the day, unbearably hot. And it's a bit cooler today. We've actually got rain forecast, which goes from something that was incredibly hot to something that's a bit cooler. And if it rains, it's going to get horribly humid and sticky. But it's summer, it's the UK, and weather is strange at the moment for everybody in one way or another, I think. So I do apologise. So I've turned my fan off today, it's cooler, I should be fine for a little while. So my video today may be a little bit shorter, so I've got crumbs everywhere. So I can keep myself cool and comfortable and so on. I wilt in the heat terribly. I'm terrible. Terrible. Anyway, just thank you to everybody who subscribed. Thank you for putting up with the fan noise in the video if you did. I appreciate that so much. And thank you for subscriptions, for clicking the notification buttons. And if you haven't done so, please consider doing that. It's completely free. And I'm trying to be consistent about uploading content. I do something nearly every day. I tend not to on Thursdays, and Fridays seems to be the days I don't, but I'm not entirely sure. So what have I got in front of me here before I start any drawing or anything else? Well, this is one that I did last week and it's actually grown on me. I need to complete it though with these areas here, or perhaps I don't. Perhaps I could leave them like that as a comparison between the difference that, you know, high contrast and very little contrast can make. So I'm really pleased with that one. I'll come back to the others. This is my current alphabet I'm kind of working on every now and again. And I thought this morning while I was coming around, I'd have a go at using spoolies, oysteroid and this kind of thing, but in a much more highly contrasting way. And if I compare this to the others, I like this. I like the graphic nature of this. So what I'm doing with drawing is also getting imported into what I'm doing with lettering, which is a good thing. It genuinely is. So let me do that, move that out the way, refocus, re-autofocus, there we go. So there's that. This is one that I drew a couple of days ago. I haven't done anything with it, but I'm considering using some pens on here. I think this paper may be okay with alcohol inks, which would be interesting, because I did have a question about alcohol inks and how sometimes Fineliners smear with them. So I want to have a look at something to do with that. But before I get into anything, of course, I may just choose another piece of paper and decide to draw. I could draw in different kinds of pens and see how alcohol markers react with those. That might be a plan. So this is what I did, yes, in my previous video. And while the video was uploading and processing and doing all the stuff that it does, I spent some time adding colour and so on, because I really wasn't happy about my colour choices here. I may have been happier if I'd carried on filling the page in, but I don't know. So rather than use coloured pencils, I thought I'd have a look at other ways of adding contrast and colour. So if I find my glasses, because I'll then be able to read what things say. Okay, so this here and these here were just coloured pencils, nothing else, just coloured pencils, and for about either 3 or 4 shades of something similar. And I also started to add black here to intensify the shadows. And I tried this again, and if you want to use black for shadows, I did black here on top of the colours. It becomes very dark, but if you put black underneath, I think that's that one. Was it the other way round? I can't remember, but if you put black underneath and allow it to blend into the colours, you get a better kind of effect. I think I had to go back and intensify the black there, whereas this one was okay. But it works. And of course other colours you can use instead of black for shadows and so on. Here I just used Inktense pencils, nothing else, and water. Just one colour usually, and just Intense in the edges and down the sides, and tried to keep it pretty light in the middle. Haven't successfully done that. There is colour there, but that's where white gel pens, white ink and other things come in. This was just coloured pencil as well here. No, it wasn't. It was Inktense. Just one colour of Inktense just to see the difference. And of course, naturally, I went and got it the wrong way around. So the light areas here. These spoolies, what I did with these was I added shading with a graphite pencil and a paper stump. With this one I did it after I'd coloured with the Inktense, so the graphite sat on top. With these two I put the graphite down, then the colour. And these are perhaps my favourite things on the whole page. I like the stripiness, I like the way I've got the highlights and the slightly darker edges. That edge could do with being a bit darker. But I like the way the graphite and the Inktense colours, the equivalent would be watercolours or watercolour inks, like brush pens and so on. I like the way it gives it a kind of metallic, almost metallic feel. Okay, so then I went on. Here's graphite. There's some areas that have just graphite on their own, so you can see what it's like on its own. And I did have to use an eraser to pick some of that up. But then I've added Inktense over the top to see what happens. Here I added Inktense in the way I did here, so starting with a lot close to the edge and lighter there, and leaving a highlight. This one, I think it was just one colour again. Here, I think I used Payne's Grey here. I think I used Payne's Grey for shadowing, and because of course I can use graphite for the shadows, or I can use an Inktense and then go over the top with colour. Either way works the same. But there's this kind of dulling down of the colour. It becomes almost metallic-y. Not metallic in a shiny way, but it's got those kinds of metallic, I don't know, it's hard to describe. So I had a lot of fun playing around with this, and I did annotate what I'd done. Yeah, that's right, these two here are Payne's Grey Inktense to create the shadows, and then colour on the top of this one to add the colour. And it is a different green to this one. I thought I picked up the same green, but I didn't. So this isn't a finished piece. It's never going to be finished. Except that I can go back and use it for trying different combinations of media out on this kind of drawing, this kind of distress inked background and paper, just to see what will happen. I'm not going to try alcohol markers on this because I know this paper just soaks them up like a sponge, and that's not good. They just spread and everything. So it's mixed media, but it's not mixed media where alcohol markers are concerned. So I think I will do something with alcohol markers. Not alcohol markers, but I need some paper. Not that one. Not that one, not that one. I've got these two that would be fine. These are the mixed, the Clairefontaine mixed media and so on. So let me just pop those out the way. I've got a fine liner pen there. Oh, what have I done with those now? 2 ticks, I'll be back. Let me scurry and get my supplies. Be back. Okay, I'm back. That was interesting. I've been looking for my Copic Multiliners. Do you think I can find them? I've put them somewhere safe, obviously. And when I've put them somewhere safe, that means they could be any blooming where in the universe. Let me just have a quick look in a pencil case here, because I'm just wondering. Nope, not in there. I know, I do this and I just think, oh, partly it's because I think I just have way too many pencil cases with stuff in. I'm a bit of a hoarder of pens, it has to be said. And it shouldn't really be going into pencil cases now, because I should have done this before I came back. Not in that one. I'll check one last one. But otherwise, I know from experience how they work, but it'd be nice to share that experience with you. Nope, not in that one either. Hordes of Uni Pin markers and so on. So I've got no idea where I've put my Copics. No doubt they will turn up as soon as I finish this. And I'll go, oh, that's where I put them. Yeah, I know. Oh well, no need to worry about it. It is what it is. So I've got a selection of pens here. I've got a Uni Pin fine liner. I dug out a couple of Copics. I've got no 2 there, but I'll put that to one side. I've got a Zig Writer, which is permanent. I've got one of my TWSBI Eco pens filled with Documentus ink, which is permanent. And I've got, this is an Arteza Inconic, which is black, and these are water soluble. And I did pick up as well a kneadable eraser, because I have, oh, and I've got the Molotovs as well. I've got Molotov fine liners. So let me pick out a line one here that would be a nice line size. These are great. The ink in them seems to be absolutely fantastic, but I don't like how they feel in my hand. So let's start with those, and I will make a list of what we're drawing with what. So these are the Molotov. Like so. And I'm just going to draw something with them that I can then add alcohol marker to. Let's do spoolies, because spoolies have been the design of the moment, haven't they? I want my fingers down there, and it's really uncomfortable to hold my fingers that low down on the pen. Which is such a shame, because they really do draw and write really lovely. But my fingers are too far away for the control I like, you know. Just saying, I mean, everybody's different, and I do tend to hold my pens very close to the nibs. You know, fountain pens I have to be really careful of, otherwise I end up with the ink all over my fingers rather than on the page. Or on the page as a result of smudging and smearing. So I am just going to add some line weight there. And I'm just very quickly going to draw something else here, so we can just have a look at how these work with or without the extra line weight as well. So there's a couple there. So I'll put that one to one side. Let's have a look at the micron. And this is a PN, so it's going to be a bit thicker, which is fine. Oh, that's a different one. I don't know what I was doing there. Okay, we'll work with it, and we'll create a weird spoolie now. There we go. We've got a spiral in the middle. There's a variation. I don't know if you saw me draw that. This is an old PN, so the nib is quite flexible. That's the inner part that is, I created a spiral there to begin with and just aura'd it until the aura's met the outside line. So let me just pop some weight there. And again, I'm just going to add a couple of others here just to see the difference that certain things make. This isn't very good either this morning. Okay, so that was the microns. Uni Pins. So this is an 03 Uni Pin, and it's one I've been using for a couple of weeks now, so the nib is pretty much wrecked. Oh, see, I've done it again. So I'm starting with a spiral. So if I come over here and go to one side, and so I'm just starting here, and I'm just taking this like so, and then at one point or another it's going to go around this way, and all's fine and well in the world. But I've got a little spiral in the middle. I like that. An unexpected variation. So again, let me just add some weight to the lines. this isn't about drawing precisely, it's about doing what I do when I draw and seeing how alcohol markers react. And again, I'm just going to do a couple of tests here, like so, just in case I need them. So that's that. Okay, the Zig Writer. Some Zig Writer again. Let's just try and get this as a spoolie. This black is lovely in black. These are really lovely pens, but they're so hard to come by here in the UK these days, it seems. You know, I hope I'll be able to get them when my set begin to run out. Having said that, I've had my sets for a number of years and barely ever used them. But they are lovely. Bear in mind that some of these will look darker because I'm using different thickness of nibs, because essentially I wasn't going to fuss and faff around trying to find the same size nibs. So this is Documenta ink. So this is in a my Twisby. So it's a bit different. And this one's the fine one. It's because my extra fine one, my fine nib, I think the pen needs a bit of a washout, or I haven't filled it correctly. It looks like there's ink in there, but it's not flowing, so it does and then it doesn't. It's strange, so I've got to sort that out. I've forgotten about that until now, so hopefully it'll be fine and well, because these pens are lovely to draw with. So I think you can tell. Part of me thinks, right, Angela, you really should be drawing with these far more. Especially as they, you know, in the grand scheme of things, as far as fountain pens go, quality fountain pens, they're really, really affordable. And of course, but then they last for a lot longer, and the only thing you need to buy is the ink to fill them up. And all's well in the world, and it saves a lot of money and a lot on the environment in the long run. Okay, so these are the Inconic, the Arteza. These are very similar to the other Fineliner pens that are water soluble, water based. So I am going to go like this, and then we'll have one there. I'm enjoying this variation with that spiral in the middle. Right, so I'm going to leave the spoolies as they are here. I can tell these are different inking just by the way it's spreading on the paper. That's expected, by the way, because I've got both distress ink and I treated this paper with water so that it will soak up more in some places and not quite as much in others, so I'm fine with that. So we've got all of these here, so this is just having a look. Okay, one thing I suggested is that really you need to leave all these inks to dry for you know, quite a while before you do this, because they can stay wet for a little bit longer. So what I'm going to do very quickly is I've got my heat tool out, and I'm just going to give these a blast just to make sure they're nice and dry. It's a bit of a cheat. And of course I'm going to end up with curly paper, but we'll have a look now. Paper's still a bit on the warm side, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this is just a kneadable eraser, but you could use any eraser at all on these. And what I'm aiming to do, and I'm going to get along one part of the spoolie, is to pick up any pigment that there is that's with this pen, which is water soluble. It's got a dye in it, a water-soluble dye. So it's a liquid colouring in water. And so there's no tiny particles, it's completely dissolved. So everything about this pen will sink into the paper, and it reactivates with water, but it shouldn't reactivate with alcohol. It shouldn't. I say shouldn't, we'll soon see. With the other pens, like the Zig Writer, these are pigment. They've got pigment in, which means there's a liquid in there, which usually has a dye in it as well, but tiny particles of pigment, solid particles, very, very fine. That's what makes pigment inks look so dark, so black, or so coloured. It's those little bits of pigment. And when you draw on paper with these, the coloured part and some of the pigment will sink into the paper, but not all of the pigment particles do. Some of them stay on the surface. And so if you use alcohol markers with these, some of those surface pigments can be picked up and shifted. That is why I try to remember to use an eraser on them, leave them for, do the drawing and come back a day later or several hours later. Use a eraser to pick up as much of that loose pigment as you can. It may make the line a little bit fainter, but if that's too much, then once you finish colouring, you can always go back and re-ink the lines that are too pale. The way around this is a potch. If you like to draw directly in ink, then add shading and colour and highlight and in the Zentangle style. If you don't mind drawing your design in pencil, and it doesn't have to be all of it unless you're planning on doing striped colours. So I could do just the basic shape of the spoolies in pencil, add the shading where I want the shading, and then come back and ink over the pencil, add the lines and cross-hatching or stippling or textures or patterns that I want to on top of that. It's a bit of a potch, but it means that there's no way that ink's going to move. And you can play around with the contrast between highlights and shadows before you do that. Depends on what medium you're using, but that's possible. It's also possible to use a pencil to do all the drawing. If you use a softer pencil, you get a darker line. But the problem with that is that pencil will smudge. Soft pencils tend to smudge an awful lot. So, just saying. So what I've got here is, that's why I've chosen this piece of paper. There's a lovely blue background, and I've dug out some of my blue, these are the Arteza Ever blends, and they're blue colours. So I've got very pale glacier blue, I've got a powder blue, and I've got an ocean blue. And so the ocean blue is the darkest I've got here, and it's not really as dark as I want, but if I get more, I will. And I will zoom in for this for you, I think. There we go. And then you can really have a good look at what's going on. So I peer over, yep, we're still focused, jolly D. So I'll start with the Molotov, and I'm just going to add my darkest shadows in to begin with, where I want the darkest areas. This is what I love about alcohol markers. I love the way that you can put so much colour down so quickly, and I am starting to just move these around a little bit, so where I'm going to get the shadow. I'm then going to use the medium shade, and the medium shade is there to help me, well, it's to help to start to ease this colour out, blend it out, get that gradient going. But it also helps to create a softer edge to this as well. Then my lightest colour, like so, and that will go there. And then I like to use, in the highlighted area, a colourless blender, just so I can feather out the edges of the lightest colour. And there we've got a spoolie. Now these colours will lighten as they dry. And I can tell you that with this, even though I've got lots and lots of ink in these dark spaces, absolutely zero spreading of or smearing of the colour, which might be a reason for me to work with the Molotovs more and try and find a way of holding them that's comfortable for me. And this was the one that I didn't use the eraser on this one, on these ones. I might have caught the edge of them, but I didn't do the darkest areas, which is a good thing. So let's just have a look here. I'm going to put the lightest colour in as the highlights on these. I'm going to add a little bit of the colourless blender in the middle just to bleach this out, because I should have done that in the first instance. Then I'm going to use my medium tone here just to get some shadows right into the corners. And then I'm going to put some of that medium tone there with some of the paler tone in the middle. Start to move it out, because in this area, in these little corners, I'm going to try to get the darkest tone where the shadows will be greatest inside there. So I'll come back to the medium colour and just use that just to blend it out. And then perhaps just use the lightest colour right in the middle to bleach out a little spot there. Am I coming through? Yeah, it'll be fine. Let me find a piece of paper I can work on. There we go. So we've got that, okay. So I'm going to do the same thing for each one. So I'm going to start with the darkest, because that's my way. Oh, that's not the darkest one. That's my way of doing this, because I prefer to see where I'm putting the darkest areas first. So don't want them to be too overwhelming, but I still need a good, region of them for that contrast to work. So I'm just using the medium shade here just to blend the edges out. I'm also thinking about where I'd like, because the bottom of this would be in shadow. Perhaps this area would be in a bit more of a shadow as well. And the nice thing about alcohol markers is you can go back and you can add another layer to intensify the colours if you wish. It's called glazing. So it is a dance back and forth with the colours, if you like. A bit of a dance between them, but I quite enjoy that in some strange and bizarre way. It's quite satisfying to do. And it just takes just that little bit of time. But I really do think alcohol markers are my kind of superpower when it comes to colouring, as is monochrome like I'm doing here. So again, we've got that, and I think while I'm here, I'm going to go back to this one, and I'm really going to add some more of the darkest tone in where I want these shadows to be darkest. And use the medium tone just to blend them out that little bit more. Medium tone will glaze the top of the medium tone that's already there and make it a little bit darker as well. So I'm quite happy with that. Here I think I might need just a bit more of this medium tone on this side perhaps. And I think around the edge here, to be honest, it's almost like we need a little bit around the edges to give them that kind of feeling that we're arching upwards. I will take the paler one here just to create that highlight. And I am potching here. But I think you can see that I've got some tissue that's blowing in the breeze that's coming in, hurrah. But that has worked nicely as well. I can't actually see any smearing of the black. That may mainly be because I have dried this. And that's the secret to it, is do the drawing, put it somewhere where it can dry thoroughly, or use a hairdryer on it to dry it completely. I've got a heat tool, a craft heat tool, not a do-it-yourself heat tool, they're different. The do-it-yourself ones are much, much hotter. But just dry the ink thoroughly and you shouldn't get any smearing. Again, I said I'd have a look at this and I'm curious as well. Okay, Uni Pins. So let's get the shadows going here. I want the shadow a little bit longer around the outsides than elsewhere. This has given me a chance as well. I'm quite enjoying doing this because it's given me a chance to really think about how I want to apply shadow to this, trying different ways of changing the shapes. So, how I leave the highlight and which areas I want in highlight to give a really great amount of dimension or volume. That appearance of volume, that this isn't flat. So we've got all of this going on here. So that's my medium. Here's my light. And with this one I'm scrubbling backwards and forwards a little bit, which if there's any I've picked some pigment up that way, but if you don't avoid the lines, then you shouldn't pick the pigment up, is what I think is the key as well. Is that it's pretty okay here, but it's trying to keep within the lines and not trying to overwork the lines with the alcohol marker. With that Uni Pin, there was a bit of smearing that I didn't get with the others. Okay, so there's that one. You see, I'm not doing these ones because what happens in this one will happen in these or not happen, as the case may be, depending on whether I've used the oh yeah, I didn't use the eraser. Let me see what happens here with this without the eraser. This one had the eraser on it and there's no smearing of the black. So that eraser trick really does help and work, it seems. And that one, we'll just add a bit of darkness in here. If you use the lightest colour you want to use to wet the area you want to add colour, it actually helps to blend as well as limits the amount of colour you can put down. But I want plenty of this darker colour. Okay, this is the Zig Writer. So again, I want this dark area here just to extend a bit further than the others, and under the bottom as well here. I do want a bit more on that side. So I want it to feel that it's sort of like this area, it curves up and over. So I'm trying to get that kind of feeling by sculpting with my pens, with the colours as it were. Now I can't see, even though I'm deliberately going over the lines here quite extensively and scrubbing back and forth, I can't see these picking up any of the pigments, which is a good thing. It is, it's a good thing. Okay, here's the lightest colour. My instincts may say that the lightest colours might do more of this than others, but seemingly not. So the Zig Writers actually work nicely, and I am going to use my colourless blender here just to bleach some areas, just to lighten the colour there. So with those, there's been no movement of the colour. Okay, let's go to the Documentus, the This is waterproof, archival quality fountain pen ink, which is waterproof. It's not water resistant, it's waterproof, which means that it won't react with water ever. And it's very stable and light as well, this pen, the ink that this is. And there's no movement of this with the alcohol markers. This is the one I was worried about because I couldn't remember if I'd used it and added alcohol markers on the top. I couldn't remember. So those are nice. Okay, it's the lightest blue here. So I'm going to add that around the edge. Ooh, there's some movement there. But I think it's because it's the lightest colour, so we're going to notice it more. So yeah, there was some there. And perhaps it's because the alcohol sat there and it's beginning to dissolve some of the ink. So that one may not be the best choice, but you know, it is what it is. And now this is the ink Onic. This is the water soluble. Fine liner. It's similar to a Staedtler Triplus or the Stabilos and so many others, the chameleon fine liners and so on. But these shouldn't be affected. Well, if they're affected, they'll be, you know, they'll be badly affected by the alcohol. But they shouldn't smear if they're not affected. And they would only smear if you use water. So alcohol-based markers will work nicely with them. I'm absolutely positive they will, because I'm sure I've used these for drawing. And my head is now sort of like going, okay. They're not the best thing to use if you want, you know, something to display in light, because they will be affected by light, because they're not archival, they're not light stable, light fast. But for this, they seem to be working pretty well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to speed up the alcohol markers drying, because I can, because, you know. And let's have a look at them when they are nice and dry. So they're all pretty much the same now in terms of dryness. And you can see there's the Documentus ink. There's a fair amount of movement there. There's nothing on this one. The Zig Writer, there's nothing. The Uni Pin, where there's a little bit round here, but it's hardly noticeable. The Molotovs, there's absolutely no movement of the pigment, and the microns as well. So of them, I have to remember I don't use my TWSBIs if I want to colour in alcohol ink. And the Uni Pins, I need to make sure I'll always use an eraser over them to pick up the pigment. But there you are. So that hopefully answers someone's questions. And I do want to add some shadows and colours, I think, to some of these, because I think that would be quite nice here. I am going to run my eraser over this just to make sure that I pick up, oops, as much of the ink here as I can. Now this is the question, isn't it? Do I want to use these lovely blues, because I have got bluey purples though, or do I want to dig into colours? Do you know, it's so hard to know what to do. It really, really is. I know what I did want to do. Because the other thing I wanted to do was to have a look at adding drop shadows. So a drop shadow is where you put a shadow underneath something to lift it off the paper. So my drop shadows are always to the left and below. And you mirror the shape. So I'm using the lightest colour I've got here to begin with. Just to add some shadow. And then I will go back and add so. Bit like that, and then I can use perhaps the medium shade just to make the shadow that little bit darker, a little bit closer to the object. Just to help with that intensity of shadow. I wouldn't use the darkest colour I've got here because it would be in conflict with the shadowed areas, or the areas of these spoolies that I want particularly dark. And I do want to darken the darker areas in some cases just by doing this idea of glazing. Of course, yes, I know I could get a darker marker out, but that means I've got to fish the sets of markers out, find the other one. Whereas this will do, it's a more subtle way of adding that extra contrast. Though I'm learning that subtlety with contrast may not be the best way to go. So do my drop shadows work? It's hard for me to see. But yeah, we're beginning to get them floating up and above. Just a bit. Just a bit. A little. But yeah. So I thought I'd share this with you today, because a question was asked, and I like to respond to questions quite timely, or a comment was made about these and how disappointing it is when they smear. But I know I've had that problem, and I know how I've solved it as well. Understanding the different kinds of inks and how they work, the chemistry of them, I suppose, in some ways, has helped me to work this out. I'm a scientist. What can I say? Chemist. You know, chemistry was my subject, and environmental pollution science, you know. Since, you know, been an environmentalist since the early 1980s, if not before. I was born one. But yeah, so yeah, so I hope that helps. I was going to add colour to the other one, but I think this is enough to be going on with for today. And again, it's showing how but it's not just looking at the inks and alcohol markers and how they interact or don't. It's also been about how I add contrast and how I think about shadows and how I can try to create give more of a volume, a dimension, a 3D look to these motifs and patterns by, you know, it's applying simple rules. Like, I know that there will always be shadow underneath an overlap. So where these seem to go under this part, there's going to be a shadow there. This seems like it's dipping down underneath, so there's going to be a shadow there. There's shadows around the edges and of the object. The further away the edge is, unless it's tipped up towards you, these though, I think they sort of curl up and over that way. Then we're going to need some shadow around those edges. The other thing I did want to do with this, hopefully I can find a pen. What's the betting? I cannot find a white gel pen for level money here. I'm going to be gutted if that's the case, because there should have been one in my pen tray there, but there isn't. So hopefully there's one in here. No, there's not. Of all the blasted things, what on earth have I done with that? It's crazy. crazy, crazy, crazy. I've obviously put some things somewhere safe, and I don't know where safe is. Oh no, there we are. It was hiding under another pen. I couldn't see it for looking. So, because I haven't got very distinct kinds of, clean that off. This is the one thing I hate about gel pens, is the way the tips become so scuzzy, is to increase the highlights. And the most highlights are going to be in the centre. So I'm going to have a lot of highlight around here, fair bit here, hardly anything there, and perhaps a couple of spots there just for fun. So just a couple there, a bigger area here, bigger one there again, and perhaps even quite a bit in this area, and then not so much there. And it just helps to lift that up. Even though they're just little dots, I'll zoom in as I do that. And again here. Dried up. Tells you how hot it is here still. Thankfully not as hot as yesterday. But it is about looking at where these highlights would be. That one's not good. Nice thing about these as well, you can always remove them, the white, if it's not in the right place, if you catch it quick enough. So this is where I want the biggest highlight to be, is in this section, and then just a little bit there perhaps. And if you compare those with the one at the bottom that has no highlights on, even though I'm just dotting them on, you can see that difference that's being made. Well, I think so. So I'll just finish this one for completion. Correction, I will if I can get this too. Like so, and then we've got that there, which really makes sure that this looks like the area of the white dots is highest. It's the highest. The more white, the higher it sort of seems to be. And if I take that idea to, say, this one, because I haven't done any highlights on this at all, then I can take my highlights where I think I'd need them. And I can break them up. They don't have to be all in the same place, same size or anything, but it's just thinking about where on this is the highlight, where is the most light going to be catching it. And I can use my colours as a guide, but just that little bit of white helps to lift things up. It will particularly help in these. And here I'm making the dots bigger. So I'm getting very small ones here and much bigger, and then fading away to small, just to help with that. So that actually does help a bit with creating a bit more volume there. These ones are really a lost cause, but let's have a look and see if we can do something here. You know, part of me says, well, it'd be better if I used a gel pen colour that isn't white, that is a lighter version, a much lighter version of these areas. And I think, yeah, that almost probably would work. And I don't mean woodwork as in carpentry. But that helps there with bringing those highlights in perhaps, and adding some more dimension. It's almost like these are now in layers that are tied together at one end. A bit like a bunch of bananas, I suppose, but, you know, weird bananas. But that would work, I think. Come on. And down this way. I'm putting these ones on this one sort of like midway along the section. And that helps to lift that. And then if I go to yesterday's very quickly, I'm just dotting the highlights in. sometimes putting a bigger dot for variation, just where I want the highlights to be, and density of dots in the middle where it's going to be lightest, but little dots spreading out beyond that, so we haven't got that harsh edge, but we've got that a sprinkle of highlights there. And the same can be done with these. Like so. And here where there'll be perhaps a highlight there, and along the leaves as well. Perhaps just a bit like that. So, and of course on these ones, absolutely highlights. These are my favourite ones ever. Bit challenging in some ways to add colour to because of the narrowness of the gaps, but doable. And just put a white area there. So it's subtle, but it does make a difference. It helps to break up the colour as well as give that. So I do hope that all of this has been of use today. I hope that you're able to learn from it, perhaps, or get some ideas of things to do. I certainly am thinking about things. I forget sometimes about using the gel pen until later, but it does bring those highlights, those bright spots in where perhaps there weren't. And bear in mind that with this one, the paper wasn't white. It's all this soft blue. There are little spots of white, but they're not very apparent. So if I want white highlights, I have to put the white highlights in. Same here, I've coloured the paper. So if we want that high contrast, we need to put them in. I choose white gel pens because it's more controllable. I don't like chalk or charcoal, the white charcoal. So they get on top of the pen lines and make them less sharp looking. They knock the colour back, even graphite does. So it's just personal preference. But there we are. So I hope that's helped. I hope you've gained something from this, and that I'll see you again soon. So until the next video, please take care and find time to be creative. Bye-bye for now.